Have you ever wanted to play a nicely realistic medieval RPG? One offering combat, social classes, living world, and a good story? Well, Kingdom Come Deliverance promises just that, and they genuinely do deliver. The game has almost everything I wanted for such an RPG, but it is sadly held back by its surprising jankiness. So we have the question, is Kingdom Come Deliverance worth playing? Let's start with the basics. The game was released on February 13th in 2018. Since then, the game has gotten 5 paid DLC, which do bring new and interesting content to the game. They are of course not all equal in content and quality, and one of them is very buggy. I will talk about that a little bit later. I bought the full edition of the game for $40, which did include all of the DLC. You can also get the base game for only $30, but honestly, the DLC are worth it if you're getting the game anyway. In total, it took me 82 hours to finish the game, and I spent a lot of my time doing the various side quests. And overall, I had fun the entire time. I'm in fact very excited to grab Kingdom Come 2 when it comes out, sometimes in 2025. In Kingdom Come Deliverance, you play Henry, the son of a blacksmith. And Henry is pretty much bad at everything. Or at least at the start of the game he is. Henry has no world experience, minimal care for responsibilities, and can't hold the sword properly to save his life. Poor guy can't even read or bandage his own wounds, though the lack of literacy was quite common for his class at the time. After attack on Henry's village and the death of his parents and the theft of the final sword his father crafted, Henry sets out on a mission to obtain the sword and get it to its rightful owner, which leads to a genuinely great story focused on honor, medieval politics, love, and finding your place in the world. And though the story does end kinda oddly, kind of feeling like it ends on a prologue for the next game, I did find the story very satisfying. Though I was frustrating that some story items were not finished in a way I felt appropriate for a game. But thankfully, with the sequel coming out, and it being a direct continuation of the first game, it doesn't bother me too much, but I would have been much more annoyed if I had gotten the game in 2018. This is an RPG, but it is not one where you make your own character. Instead, you are playing Henry, and this is his story. You can influence some of his choices, but often you are locked into dealing with whatever Henry idiotically decided to do. This has led to moments where I was yelling at the screen to tell Henry to stop being an absolute moron. But it also made me really feel like I was going through his story, and I genuinely liked Henry as a character. He is very flawed, but he is also quite endearing. And the overall game story is so good. And what makes it even better is the excellent voice acting and character writing. I found it very easy to get lost in the main story, and also easy to enjoy the various DLC content, because the story quality is quite good. Though, as I mentioned before, one of the DLC was quite buggy. Most of my issues playing the game I encountered with the Women's Lot DLC, which I found to be surprisingly unstable. The DLC does give you a loyal dog companion, which made my adventures across the realm so much more fun, and it also had a really compelling story in it, which definitely makes it worth playing. But I also encountered an issue where a quest bugged out so badly that my only way to finish the quest was to spawn in the items I needed, because otherwise I was stuck at failing the quest pretty much immediately every time I started it. Thankfully, outside of the Woman's Lot DLC, I did not come across any quests that were broken like this. But I was surprised to see how much of the side content involves stealing and poaching. But outside of breaking the law, you will also find some really neat stories, including ghost busting, bandit slaying, execution tampering, and getting so drunk with a priest you end up having to give a sermon in the morning, which is probably one of my favorite quests in the game. The main quests themselves have you investigating the attack on a farm, hunting, taking part in some nice large battles, and even going undercover, while dealing with a lot of medieval politics. There were several points in the main story where I really struggled with taking a break from the game because I wanted to see what would happen next. Though one of my favorite things of the game was the From the Ashes DLC, which allows you to build an entire village, which I found quite satisfying. When it comes to gameplay, the game is nicely fleshed out. At the start, Henry is bad at everything. You have no chance against anyone in a sword fight, or any other skill for that matter. But as you practice and level up, both you and Henry get better at what you're doing. The combat is detailed and sometimes a tad janky, with its approach of choosing where to aim the sword, working with sequences and blocking, while often facing enemies far better at sword fighting than Henry is. Early on in the game, shortly after the prologue, you will have a quest to learn sword fighting. I recommend doing that and then continuing to speak to the teacher and learn everything you can from them before you continue on with your story, as it's gonna make your gameplay much more fun. Especially learning how to block, because if you end up being bad at the combat like I am, then mastering the art of blocking is gonna save you a lot of hassle. That is how I got through most of the game. Most everything has mini-games of some sort, lockpicking, pickpocketing, even alchemy has you performing some detailed tasks. Lockpicking I found confusing at first, but as soon as I figured it out, it was quite easy. The gameplay is full of neat and often highly detailed and peculiar choices. For example, you will have a pointer on the middle of your screen at all times, except if you're using a bow. Then for some reason it vanishes and you will have to learn to aim without it. I genuinely thought it was a bug, but it is not. This is intended, and I do admit it was very satisfying when I started getting decent with the bow, but it definitely felt like an odd design choice. Thankfully, there is a pretty strong modding community, and they have created a variety of mods to deal with most of the game's peculiarities if there is something you absolutely cannot stand. I was glad to see most of the quests have some flexibility in how you solve them, be it through dialogue, combat, or thievery. And I found the world to be very much alive, with the people sleeping in their homes at night, going to specific places during the day, and you can use this knowledge to aid you in both finding them and also knowing when their houses are empty, so you can grab whatever you need. The map itself is a good size and offers fast travel to the villages and towns that you have already visited, though fast travel is not safe, as there are random encounters on the way, and depending on your skill, you can avoid them, or you have to deal with whatever awaits you. And that does mean you sometimes just have to run away from some very hostile people, because you simply don't have the ability to win them in a fight yet. The in-game clothing system is very detailed, with various layers you can have, and people respond differently depending on what you're wearing, the status of your clothes. I was very amused when people began referring to me as Sir Knight, simply because I had finally obtained a pretty nice looking plate armor. And I found it advantageous to carry a few different clothing items to best utilize their stats for my different activities. The world of Kingdom Come Deliverance is highly detailed. It is clearly created by people who care a lot about this game. And I wish the game ran better and had less issues, because it's honestly a great game. But it has issues. The game frankly runs like ass at times, especially when it comes to textures. That's for some reason, no matter what I did, the textures loading remained abhorrent throughout the playthrough. Often, textures would slowly be popping in throughout conversations, but not all at once. And generally, facial textures would come in first, meaning I spent a lot of time speaking to people with highly detailed faces and PlayStation 2 clothing. I encountered several crashes while playing through the game, which made the save system the game utilizes extremely annoying, as the checkpoints are both inconsistent, and saving requires you either to find a bed that you can save in, or use save here snaps, which is an alcoholic drink that allows you to quick save. You can craft it with an alchemy bench, or buy it from merchants, but I feel it is not a good mechanic to have in a game that is simply not stable. You can save and exit at any time, so at least you're not going to be in trouble if you quickly have to get away from the game. Overall, I find Kingdom Come Deliverance to be an amazing game, both in story, gameplay, and jankiness. I am glad I played it, and I highly recommend it to anyone interested in some medieval RPG. It is a great story and a lot of fun to play, and I can't wait for the sequel. But I can tell you that the majority of my 80 hours in the game, I was having fun. And I hope if you give it a try that you will have just as much fun as I did. But that is of course up to you. Do you think Kingdom Come Deliverance is worth playing? Tell me your judgment in the comments. And if you played it before, make sure to avoid any spoilers for those who have not gotten to play the game yet. And while you're down there, please give an offering to the algorithmic overlords by liking and subscribing. But in the end, all I want to say is takk fyrir að horfa og eigðu yndislegan dag.